Far away in the deep past, the earth is restless. Beneath the crust, tectonic plates shift, slowly pulling apart. In East Africa, the stretching of the land creates a scar that will never fully heal. This scar becomes the East African Rift Valley. It is not a single line, but a vast region of fractures, ridges, and low basins. Here, the ground sinks, while nearby cliffs rise sharply. Volcanoes stand along the rift like scattered sentinels, erupting again and again. From their mouths, flows of basalt and ash spread across the savannas. Seasonal rains gather in the depressions, forming lakes that shimmer in the dry air. The valley is a place of constant transformation, both dangerous and rich. It is in this shifting environment that the first evidence of stone tools appears. The date is 2.6 million years ago, during the late Pliocene. At this time, Earth is cooling. In the far north, ice sheets expand, locking away water. Rainfall patterns alter across continents. Africa becomes a land of change, greener in some periods, drier in others. Grasslands open, woodlands retreat, rivers shift course. Hominins, early human ancestors, must adapt to survive these fluctuations. For generations, survival has relied on strength, speed, and luck. Hands can grasp, teeth can tear, but access to resources is limited. Large carcasses of animals remain out of reach. Marrow hidden deep inside bones is inaccessible. But now, in this landscape of volcanic stone, something new begins. Stones are no longer only part of the ground. They become objects chosen, lifted, and struck with purpose. The first tools are born. At sites such as Gona, in modern-day Ethiopia, archaeologists discover this story. Among layers of ancient river sediment, they find cores, rounded cobbles of volcanic rock. Some bear the unmistakable scars of human action, flakes removed in deliberate strikes. Nearby lie the flakes themselves, razor-sharp shards of stone. These are not random fragments broken by nature. Their edges are too regular, their angles too precise. The pattern of removal shows intention, a hand guiding stone against stone. This technology is now called the Oldowan, named later after Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, where similar tools are found. With these tools, new opportunities open. Sharp flakes slice through hide and tendon. Bones split to release the rich marrow within. Marks on fossilized animal remains confirm this. Straight incisions cross ribs and long bones, traces that no tooth or claw could make. These cut marks are among the earliest evidence of meat processing by hominins. The tools do not hunt the animals, but when a carcass is found, they allow its nourishment to be claimed. The Rift Valley itself makes this possible. Volcanic activity supplies abundant raw material. Basalt, rhyolite, and obsidian tumble into riverbeds and lake margins. Streams concentrate these stones, ready to be chosen. Animals gather at the water's edge, leaving behind bones. The ingredients for tool use, stone, water, and animal remains converge in one place. Necessity and opportunity meet, shaping a new chapter in survival. The scale of activity at Gona is striking. Thousands of artifacts are scattered across the deposits. They do not come from a single moment, but from many. Over hundreds of generations, hominins likely returned to the same places. They gathered stones, struck flakes, and left behind fragments. What archaeologists find today is not an isolated event, but a pattern of repeated behavior. This detail, less widely known, suggests that tool-making may already have become a tradition, something passed down, copied, and maintained. Yet mysteries remain unsolved. Which species made these first tools? Fossils of Australopithecus garhi are found in deposits of a similar age nearby. Could this species have shaped the first edges? Some argue that early members of the genus Homo were already present. But fossils of early Homo are scarce from this time, leaving uncertainty. It is possible that more than one lineage experimented with stone. The tools themselves are silent, offering no clear answer. The broader world is also changing. Globally, temperatures cool as the Pliocene gives way to the Pleistocene. Forests contract in many regions, while grasslands expand. Herbivores adapt. Grazing in open spaces. Predators follow the herds. For hominins, the shifting mosaic of habitats requires flexibility. The sharp edge of stone provides an advantage. It expands diets beyond fruits and tubers toward meat and marrow. This adaptation may help ancestors endure the unpredictable climate. Step by step, the process unfolds. A hand selects a cobble from a stream. Another stone is lifted as a hammer. With a sharp blow, a flake breaks away. The flake is picked up, its edge tested against wood, hide, or bone. If it cuts, it is used. If not, another flake is struck. Through repetition, the knowledge deepens. The rhythm of stone against stone echoes across generations. These first tools are simple in form: cores, flakes, and hammerstones, nothing more. Yet within them lies the seed of future technologies. Later, hand axes will appear, symmetrical and refined. Much later, still, blades, points, and ornaments will follow. But at this beginning, the achievement is not design, but decision. The choice to strike stone upon stone and to keep the fragment that results. Archaeologists sometimes describe this as the dawn of technology. It is not a sudden breakthrough, but a slow unfolding. Innovation may have begun many times in many places, with many hands. Some attempts may have been forgotten, others survived, becoming traditions. What we see in the Rift Valley is not a spark alone, but the quiet persistence of practice. On a planetary scale, these small actions are almost invisible. Earth continues its cycles of orbit and tilt. Ice expands in the polar regions. Seas rise and fall with shifting climate. Volcanoes erupt, scattering ash over wide landscapes. Yet, among these vast processes, the striking of two stones marks a subtle turning point. For the first time, life on Earth reshapes matter not by instinct alone, but by thought and choice. The Rift Valley holds the memory of this threshold. Its ridges and lakes witness the earliest marks of deliberate technology, silent, enduring. They remain until revealed again by careful excavation. In their stillness, they remind us how fragile and yet how profound this first step was. A stone lifted, a blow struck, an edge created, and with it, a path opened that will one day span the world. At the edge of a shallow stream, where volcanic cobbles lie half buried in sand, an early hominin stops. The water glitters in the sun, moving slowly around scattered stones. Some are smooth and heavy, shaped by centuries of tumbling. Others are sharp, broken by chance. Among them, one stone feels right in the hand. It is lifted, turned, weighed. Nearby, Another stone is picked up. This second one is harder, fit to be a hammer. With a measured swing, the hammer meets the first cobble. A sharp crack echoes across the air. A flake breaks free. Its edge is thin, sharper than any claw or tooth. The flake is held carefully, tested against a piece of wood or hide. It cuts cleanly. The first step of technology unfolds again, as it has many times before. This act is simple to describe, but complex in its implications. The stone that receives the blow is called the core. It is chosen for its fine-grained structure, often basalt, rhyolite, or quartzite. The hammerstone is another cobble, selected for toughness. The strike must fall at the right angle, too shallow, and the hammer slips, too steep, and the stone shatters without form. Somewhere in between lies the precise line. When found, the result is a flake with a razor-sharp edge. The flake is the goal, though the core itself can sometimes serve as a chopper. From this process, both flake and core become tools. Archaeologists call this method the Oldowan. It is the earliest known stone tool tradition, dating back 2.6 million years. Its artifacts are scattered across sites in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. The tools appear simple, yet they carry evidence of choice. Edges are prepared by repeated strikes. Some cores are reduced systematically, showing awareness of form. Flakes vary in size and thickness, suggesting different uses. Thin flakes slice meat or plant fibers. Thicker ones scrape hides or crack bone. Even at this early stage, variation suggests intention. The discovery of Oldowan tools at Gona in Ethiopia is especially important. There, archaeologists have uncovered thousands of flakes, cores, and hammerstones. They lie in dense concentrations, preserved by layers of river sediment. These are not random accidents of nature. The fracture angles are too consistent, the edges too sharp, the clustering too deliberate. When compared with naturally broken stones, the difference is unmistakable. The evidence shows repeated action, carried out over long spans of time. One confirmed fact is clear: stone tools mark a turning point in human evolution. They expand access to food sources. Cut marks on fossilized bones show that flakes were used to butcher animals. Long bones bear parallel grooves, where sharp edges sliced flesh from bone. Some bones are cracked open, exposing the rich marrow within. This resource, it's inaccessible, becomes part of the diet. It provides fat and calories vital for survival in shifting climates. A lesser-known detail is the skill needed to control fracture. When a cobble is struck, the flake follows a curve known as the conchoidal fracture. This curve is predictable, but only if the angle and force are right. To produce useful flakes, hominins had to learn by trial and error. The earliest toolmakers may not have understood the physics, but they sensed the results. Over generations, this knowledge grew into tradition, passed on by observation and imitation. Mysteries remain unsolved. Which hominin species first struck these cores? Some argue for Australopithecus garhi, found near deposits of similar age. Others suggest early members of the genus Homo. The fossil record is too sparse to decide. Perhaps both species experimented, or perhaps one lineage learned from another. The tools do not answer this question. They show what was done, not who did it. The hand that strikes the core does more than shape stone. It integrates body and mind. The eyes judge the stone's surface. The hand grips. The arm swings. The ear hears the crack. The senses work together in a coordinated act. Some scientists suggest that such repeated actions influence the evolution of the brain. Motor skills, spatial awareness, and memory may all have developed alongside tool use. Though the evidence is indirect, the possibility is strong. On the scale of the planet, the Rift Valley continues to shift. Volcanoes erupt, depositing layers of ash that bury and preserve artifacts. Rivers change course, carrying cobbles to new places. Lakes expand and contract with changing rainfall. In the far north, glaciers grow, pulling Earth toward the colder epochs of the Pleistocene. Amid these vast processes, a flake struck from a stone seems small, yet it signals a profound change in the way life interacts with matter. Over more than 1 million years, the Oldowan tradition will persist. Generation after generation repeats the same action. Flakes and cores remain similar in form across time and space. Innovation is slow, almost silent, but continuity itself is a kind of strength. In a world of shifting climates, stability provides survival. The sharp edge of stone remains reliable, no matter the landscape. Step by step, this knowledge spreads. Children watch elders at work. They imitate, at first awkwardly, then with skill. Through gesture and repetition, the method is taught. No words are needed. Hands and eyes carry the lesson forward. Over centuries, this practice becomes tradition. The rhythm of hammer-on core becomes as familiar as the call of birds or the rustle of grass. Each core holds a record of these choices. Every flake removed is a mark of decision. Some cores show long sequences of strikes, each edge carefully managed. Others reveal only a few attempts, abandoned when enough flakes were obtained. Together, they form the earliest archive of human behavior, not written on paper, not carved into wood, but recorded in stone. The legacy of this act is immense. From the first flake, struck in the Rift Valley, a path extends forward. It leads to hand axes and blades and points. It leads to houses, ships, and cities. The spark of technology begins here, with stone against stone. Though the toolmakers could not know the future, their actions set it in motion. The hand that strikes the core does not seek innovation. It seeks survival. Yet in meeting that need, it opens a door. Through that door will come art, language, and culture. All these are distant, but their root lies in this simple act. A blow struck, a flake freed, an edge born. The beginning of technology rests in that motion. And so the cores remain, scattered across ancient riverbeds and buried in ash. They wait in silence until uncovered again by modern hands. When we hold them today, we feel their weight, we see their scars. In them is the memory of the first strikes, the echo of a choice made long ago. It is the quiet memory of hands that changed the course of human history, one flake at a time. The Rift Valley is a land of contrast, but its rivers and lakes bring constancy. Where water flows, life gathers in shallow basins. Rain fills depressions with shimmering pools. Along ridges, streams cut through volcanic rock, carrying sand and cobbles to the lowlands. Everywhere the water moves, it creates edges, transitions between wet and dry, between safety and risk. At these boundaries, early hominins return again and again. Here they drink, here they forage, and here they leave behind the earliest traces of daily life with stone tools. The water's edge is a magnet for living things. Antelope, zebras, and elephants walk dusty paths that end in the shallows. Crocodiles lurk in the reeds, their eyes just above the surface. Flocks of birds wheel overhead, feeding on insects that swarm where water meets grass. For hominins, the attraction is obvious. Plants grow thick along riverbanks. Edible tubers lie in soft mud. Shellfish hide in shallows. And when animals gather to drink, opportunities appear not only for hunting or scavenging, but also for observation. The water's edge is where the world converges. For tool-making ancestors, rivers and lakes are more than places to drink. They are sources of stone. Cobbles roll downstream for kilometers, smoothed by current but still strong. Volcanic outcrops crumble in storms, filling streambeds with raw material. At the margins of rivers, the earliest toolmakers bend to pick up stones. A hammer is chosen, a core lifted, a strike delivered. Flakes fall to the ground, sharp and new. Beside them, bones are split open, and marrow is released. The water's edge becomes a workshop and a dining place in one. At Oldowan Gorge in Tanzania, archaeologists find such traces. Clusters of stone flakes are scattered beside fossil bones. Some bones carry the unmistakable grooves of sharp stone cutting through flesh. Others are fractured, the breakage patterns showing deliberate hammering. Similar discoveries are made at Kubifora in Kenya and at Gona in Ethiopia. The evidence repeats. Where rivers once flowed, tools were struck and animals were processed. These places are not random scatterings of stone, they are recurring stages of activity. A confirmed fact is that stone tools allowed early hominins to reach resources no other primate could. Without claws, they could not rip thick hides. Without sharp teeth, they could not easily chew through sinew. With flakes, they could slice, scrape, and cut. The ability to open carcasses gave access to flesh left behind by larger predators. The ability to crack bones released marrow, dense with calories and fat. In lean times, this meant survival. The sharp edge of stone turned carcasses into feasts. A lesser-known detail lies in the proximity of tools to water. At Gona, many flakes are found within meters of the ancient river channels. This suggests tools were not carried far. Stones may have been struck and used immediately. The flakes applied to bones found on the spot. The rivers did not only supply water, they supplied both raw materials and opportunities. The water's edge was the perfect place to make and use tools in one continuous act. Yet mysteries remain. Were these riverside places true campsites, where groups rested for hours or days? Or were they brief stops where tools were made and used quickly before moving on? Some archaeological sites contain dense concentrations of artifacts and bones, suggesting repeated use. Others are lighter, more scattered, harder to interpret. Scholars debate whether hominins had any sense of place beyond immediate need. Did they return to familiar spots deliberately, guided by memory? Or did the rivers simply draw them again and again because of their resources? The stones are silent on this matter. The water itself is never constant. At the planetary scale, climate shapes its flow. Earth's orbit wobbles slowly, tilting and shifting sunlight. When rainfall increases, rivers swell and lakes spread wide. Wetlands appear, rich with fish and reeds. When rains decline, lakes shrink to shallow basins, cracked with mud. The water's edge retreats, forcing all who depend on it to follow. Hominins adapt to these cycles, moving with the water, carrying their knowledge of stone with them. The rhythm of climate is written into the rhythm of life. Step by step, the daily pattern repeats. A group approaches a riverside, scanning for danger. Children stay close while adults collect stones. A core is struck, flakes scatter, a bone is split, marrow sucked. After hours or days, the group moves on, leaving behind a scatter of fragments. Generations later, sediments bury the site. Millions of years later, archaeologists uncover it. Each flake, each mark, becomes part of a record that outlasts the group itself. The water's edge is a place of both abundance and risk. Predators know it well. Crocodiles strike from below. Lions wait in grasses. Leopards stalk silently. But the risk cannot outweigh the need. Without water, there is no survival. The dangers are accepted as part of life, and strategies emerge: watchfulness, movement in groups, quick departures. The edges are never fully safe, yet always essential. Even the choice of stone reflects awareness. Some cobbles are carried short distances away from the river, perhaps to quieter spots. Others are worked immediately where they are found. This shows flexibility. The toolmakers do not follow a single, rigid pattern. They respond to the circumstances of each visit. Such small decisions accumulate into traditions of behavior. In these repeated acts, memory begins to shape the landscape. The water's edge is not yet a home, not yet a village, but it is familiar. Groups may return season after season, generation after generation. The rivers become landmarks of survival, places where food, water, and stone always converge. Though the tools are simple, the sense of place is profound. On the scale of deep time, these riversides seem fleeting. Water shifts, lakes vanish, climates turn, but the traces remain in sediment and stone. Archaeologists kneel in dry gullies today, brushing away dust to reveal flakes struck millions of years ago. What was once a living edge is now a fossil shore. Yet the story it tells is clear. Life at the water's edge is the foundation of the human journey. It is here that stone tools are tested, bones are opened, and survival strategies are shaped. It is here that necessity meets opportunity, where the needs of the body align with the resources of the landscape. In these quiet, steady actions, the course of humanity bends toward the future. A stone struck, a flake used, a bone cut, a marrow meal shared beside water. The pattern is simple, but enduring. It carries forward through ages of climate change and shifting ground, anchoring the story of human ancestors in the rhythm of rivers and lakes. On the open plains of the Rift Valley, the bodies of large animals lie scattered. Some are the remains of antelope taken down by lions. Some are zebras fallen to exhaustion, or elephants lost to drought. Scavengers circle and feed, but when they depart, opportunities remain. For hominins armed with sharp flakes of stone, these carcasses are more than bones. They are gateways to a new source of nourishment: meat, marrow, and fat, all waiting to be released by the edge of stone. The landscape is full of giants, early elephants, some twice the size of their modern relatives, graze the grasslands. Ancient buffalo, massive hippopotamuses, and towering giraffes share the same space. Their deaths provide a feast, but only for those with the means to reach it. Without tools, hides are too thick to penetrate, tendons too tough to cut. With stone flakes, the barriers fall away. The bones themselves, once unbreakable, yield to hammer stones. Marrow flows out, rich and dense, a store of energy hidden within. Archaeological evidence shows this transition clearly. At sites like Buri and Gona in Ethiopia, fossil bones bear cut marks more than 2.5 million years old. On ribs and jaws, straight incisions reveal where flesh was sliced away. On leg bones, impact scars show where hammerstones struck to break them open. These are not random scratches. They match the motions of butchery, deliberate and repeated. The evidence confirms that early toolmakers were not only using stone, but using it specifically to process animal remains. A confirmed fact is that these marks are older than the first widely accepted fossils of the genus Homo. This suggests that other hominins, perhaps Australopithecus species, were already exploiting meat. The tools extend the reach of the hand, allowing access to nutrition that shaped survival. Meat and marrow offer more concentrated energy than most plant foods. In an environment of fluctuating climate, such resources could make the difference between life and death. A lesser-known detail lies in the size of the animals. Many of the bones with cut marks come from very large species, hippopotamuses, elephants, even giraffes. It is unlikely that early hominins hunted such giants. More probably, they scavenged carcasses left by predators or natural death. Still, the evidence suggests that they were capable of exploiting opportunities on a large scale. Even fragments of meat from such animals could feed many mouths. Yet mysteries remain. Did hominins wait until predators had finished, sneaking in to take what remained? Or did they approach more boldly, driving away hyenas or vultures with noise and numbers? The tools show what was done, but not how it was accomplished. Some scientists believe that early hominins were primarily opportunistic scavengers. Others argue they may have begun to hunt smaller prey, supplementing scavenging with active pursuit. The truth may lie somewhere in between, still hidden in the record. The act of breaking bones for marrow carries significance beyond food. It requires foresight. A hammerstone must be chosen, the bone placed securely, the strike delivered with force. Too light a blow leaves the bone unbroken, too heavy, and the marrow is lost in fragments. The action teaches precision and persistence. Through such tasks, skills are practiced and passed on. At the planetary scale, the importance of meat is connected to climate. As Africa shifts between wetter and drier periods, vegetation changes, woodlands retreat, grasslands expand. Plant foods may be less reliable, but large animals continue to move across the plains, their bodies carrying concentrated nutrition. By turning to meat and marrow, hominins gain a more flexible diet. This adaptability allows them to endure cycles of drought and abundance. Step by step, scenes of butchery repeat. A carcass lies near the water's edge. Flakes slice into hide, peeling back layers to reach flesh. Bones are cracked with hammerstones, marrow scooped out with sharp fragments. Grease stains the tools, which are discarded nearby. Vultures wheel overhead, waiting their turn. The cycle of life and death continues, but now with new participants. The significance of marrow is often overlooked. Modern nutrition studies reveal its richness in fat, essential for brain development and energy. For early hominins, marrow may have been one of the most valuable foods available. Unlike flesh, which predators often consumed first, marrow remained hidden inside bones long after the kill. With stone tools, hominins could reach what other scavengers left behind. This niche provided a steady supply of nutrition. Over time, the reliance on animal resources may have influenced anatomy and behavior. Smaller teeth appear in fossils after this period, suggesting less need for chewing tough plants. brain size, while still modest, begins to increase gradually. Though the link is debated, many scientists see a connection between tool use, meat consumption, and evolutionary change. The act of breaking bones for marrow may have shaped not only survival, but the path of human development. Still, the pace of change is slow. For over 1 million years, the tools remain simple: flakes, cores, hammerstones. The butchery scenes repeat without great innovation. This constancy reflects stability. What works is maintained, passed on through generations. In the rhythm of survival, continuity is as important as invention. At sites across East Africa, archaeologists uncover these ancient meals: a scatter of flakes, a cluster of broken bones, ash from nearby volcanic eruptions, preserving the moment in time. Each site is a window into a meal eaten millions of years ago. Each flake, each cut mark, is a trace of life lived at the edge of survival. The giants of the plains may have seemed beyond reach, but with stone in hand, early hominins found a way. They did not bring down the elephants or the hippos, but they claimed a part of them nonetheless. In marrow and scraps, they found sustenance. In the rhythm of bone breaking, they found continuity. The image is quiet. A group gathers around a carcass, tools in hand. They cut, they crack, they feed. Around them, the Rift Valley stretches wide, rivers glinting in the sun, volcanoes looming on the horizon. The scene will be repeated countless times, across centuries and across landscapes. From giants of the past to smaller prey of the future, the principle remains the same. Stone opens what flesh alone cannot. Thus, the story of meat from the bones of giants becomes part of the human lineage. It is not a tale of conquest, but of adaptation. The flakes and hammerstones tell of persistence, patience, and survival. From these acts, a foundation is laid for the long journey ahead. The path of humanity is carved not in sudden leaps, but in steady steps, one bone split, one marrow feast, one tool struck at a time. In the long expanse of deep time, the lives of early hominins unfold slowly. The Rift Valley stretches wide, its cliffs and basins shifting with the ages. Lakes rise and fall, grasslands spread, then shrink. Volcanoes erupt, scattering ash that settles like quiet blankets over the land. And through these rhythms of the earth, another rhythm emerges, the steady, patient rhythm of survival. Generations follow one another, each living much as the last. The tools remain simple, flakes struck from cores, hammerstones held firmly in hand. The same gestures are repeated again and again. A cobble is chosen, struck, fractured. A flake is used to cut meat, to scrape wood, to split a bone. The core, once useful, is discarded. Another is found. The pattern continues. This is not an age of innovation, but of endurance. Archaeologists see this constancy clearly in the Oldowan record. For more than 1 million years, from 2.6 to 1.6 million years ago, the tools change very little. Cores, flakes, and hammerstones appear at sites across East Africa. Though separated by centuries and vast distances, they look almost the same. There is no sudden leap, no new design. The rhythm is slow, measured, unhurried. It mirrors the pace of the climate, the movement of rivers, the turning of Earth itself. A confirmed fact is that this long period of technological stability is one of the most remarkable in human history. Later ages will bring rapid change, hand axes, fire, ornaments, and art. But in this early chapter, stability rules. It is not weakness, it is resilience. What worked for survival remained unchanged precisely because it was effective. A lesser-known detail is the sheer abundance of tools. At Gona, at Oldowan, at Kubi Fora, thousands of flakes lie scattered in ancient sediments. Some sites preserve layers upon layers of stone debris, left by repeated visits over centuries. The sheer number suggests that toolmaking was not rare or occasional. It was woven into the fabric of daily life. Everyday tasks required sharp edges, and sharp edges required stone. The rhythm of survival was a rhythm of stone struck upon stone. Yet mysteries remain. Why did tools remain unchanged for so long? Did hominins lack the imagination to alter them? Or was the Oldowan truly sufficient for every need? Some archaeologists suggest that early hominins may have innovated in other ways, using perishable materials such as wood, plant fibers, or hide. If so, these tools would rarely survive in the fossil record. Others argue that stability itself was adaptive, providing reliability in uncertain times. The absence of change does not mean the absence of skill. The slow rhythm of survival is not only technological, it is social. Knowledge is passed not through words, but through imitation. Children watch as adults strike flakes from cobbles. They mimic, at first clumsy, then more precise. The skill spreads quietly, embedded in daily life. It requires no instruction, no deliberate teaching, only repetition. In this way, traditions endure. The rhythm of survival becomes the rhythm of culture. On the planetary scale, Earth's climate continues to shift. Ice sheets grow in the far north, lowering global sea levels. Rainfall patterns change, turning some regions greener, others more arid. Animals migrate with the seasons, following grasses and water. Hominins follow too, adapting to the new cycles. The sharp edge of stone allows them to remain flexible, to extract resources from a wide range of environments. The pace of change is slow but steady, mirroring the unhurried steps of hominin life. Step by step, survival unfolds. A group moves across open grassland, carrying nothing but knowledge and sharp stones. They find a carcass, slice it open, feed together. They drink at a river, watch for predators, strike new flakes when needed. At night, they gather in small groups, resting, listening to the sounds of the plain. The days pass, one like another, bound by necessity and repetition. It is not a life of invention, but of endurance. The bones of animals bear witness to this rhythm. Cut marks repeat the same patterns across centuries. Parallel grooves on ribs, impact scars on long bones, evidence of marrow extraction again and again. The same actions performed by countless hands, each separated by time but linked by need. The archaeological record is a chorus of repetition, a song of survival sung in stone and bone. The pace of human development at this stage challenges modern expectations. We imagine progress as rapid, marked by leaps and discoveries. But here, progress is patience. The Oldowan tradition shows that survival depends less on constant change than on reliable continuity. The rhythm of life is slow, but it is steady, and in that steadiness lies strength. The mystery of endurance remains open. Why did the rhythm not break sooner? Why did no one strike a new form from stone, experiment with symmetry, or refine the core? Perhaps they did, and the evidence is lost. Perhaps they did not need to. In either case, the result is the same: 1,000,000 years of survival, shaped by the same simple tools. The image is quiet, A group sits at the edge of a stream. One strikes stone against stone, producing a flake. Another cracks a bone, releasing marrow. Children watch, repeating the motions with smaller cobbles. Nearby, animals graze, birds call. Water moves steadily. The rhythm of life continues, patient and unbroken. The slow rhythm of survival is not a story of drama. It is a story of constancy. For more than 1,000 millennia, the pattern endures. It is the quiet persistence of life adapting, not through leaps, but through steps, stone against stone, day after day, generation after generation. The rhythm is slow, but it carries forward the lineage that will one day change the world. The earliest stone tools mark more than survival. They mark the beginning of something enduring, knowledge that moves beyond instinct toward tradition. Instinct is born in the body. It guides animals to flee from predators, to seek food, to care for young. But tradition is learned, shared, and remembered. It belongs not only to one generation, but to many. And in the quiet rhythm of the Oldowan, tradition begins to take shape. At first glance, flakes and cores appear too simple to hold culture. They are rough, irregular, lacking the symmetry of later hand axes. But their very repetition tells a deeper story. For more than 1 million years, across vast regions of Africa, the same method is used. The same types of flakes appear in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Tanzania. The same hammerstones bear the same scars. This cannot be explained by chance alone. It suggests memory, imitation, and continuity. A confirmed fact is that stone toolmaking requires learning. Even to produce a single sharp flake, the strike must be precise. The angle, the force, the choice of stone, all matter. Experiments show that untrained individuals rarely succeed without guidance. For early hominins, the knowledge of how to strike stone must have been passed on. Children likely watched as adults struck flakes from cobbles. They tried, failed, tried again, until the rhythm was mastered. This process marks a shift from instinct to tradition. A lesser-known detail comes from experimental archaeology. Modern researchers who attempt to reproduce Oldowan tools find that skill improves over time. After dozens of attempts, strikes become more consistent, flakes more usable. This suggests that ancient toolmakers too practiced repeatedly, learning from each blow. Such practice implies memory and patience. It also implies social contexts, where individuals could observe one another and copy the motions. Even without language, the body carried knowledge across generations. Yet mysteries remain. How much of this knowledge was conscious? Did toolmakers understand, even dimly, the principles of fracture? Or did they simply repeat actions they had seen, guided by results rather than ideas? Archaeologists debate whether this was true teaching or simple imitation. Perhaps both were present, depending on the situation. The stones reveal skill, but they do not reveal thought. The line between instinct and tradition remains blurred, half hidden in the record. Still, the pattern of continuity speaks strongly. Tradition does not require words. It requires only repetition. When the same motions are performed across time, when the same tools appear across space, tradition exists. The Oldowan is thus not just a technology, it is the first sign of cultural inheritance. It shows that early hominins lived in communities where knowledge outlived individuals. At the planetary scale, such traditions mirror the slow cycles of Earth. The orbit shifts, bringing wetter or drier centuries. Forests expand, then retreat, replaced by grasslands. Volcanoes erupt, covering landscapes with ash. Through all this, the Oldowan remains. Its stability reflects the stability of tradition itself. Like rivers carving valleys over millennia, tool-making carves continuity into human life. Step by step, the acts of tradition unfold. A child picks up a cobble, striking it against another. The flake is too small, its edge blunt. An elder takes the cobble, showing how to hold it, how to strike at the right angle. The child watches, then tries again. The flake is sharper this time, more useful. Through such small exchanges, knowledge passes silently. The body learns what the mind cannot yet explain. This process shapes not only survival, but cognition. Toolmaking engages memory, coordination, and planning. It requires seeing not only the stone in hand, but the flake that might be struck from it. It requires anticipation of shape, even if only dimly understood. Each strike teaches patience and control. Some researchers suggest that these demands helped shape the evolution of human intelligence. Whether or not the connection is direct, the possibility is strong. Tradition also shapes identity. To belong to a group is to share its knowledge. Those who can strike flakes successfully provide for others. Those who cannot must learn or risk exclusion. The ability to make tools thus becomes part of what it means to be human. It is no longer only a matter of instinct, but of belonging to a tradition larger than oneself. In the archaeological record, this is seen not in individual tools, but in patterns. Sites across East Africa, separated by hundreds of kilometers and thousands of years, revealed the same methods. The similarity suggests that groups carried knowledge as they moved, spreading traditions across landscapes. Like rivers flowing outward, culture begins to spread. It is still fragile, still simple, but it endures. The slow pace of this tradition is itself remarkable in modern times. Traditions often change within generations, but the Oldowan persists for more than 1,000 millennia. Its constancy shows that tradition can be both powerful and conservative. Once established, it does not easily shift. This conservatism may reflect the deep link between knowledge and survival. When a method works, it is maintained. When a rhythm sustains life, it is not abandoned. Still, hints of variation appear. Some sites show flakes struck more systematically, edges more carefully shaped. Others show rougher, less precise tools. This variation may reflect individual skill or local traditions within the broader Oldowan. Perhaps some groups were more skilled, others less so. The differences hint at diversity in practice, though all remained within the same general pattern. The story of tradition is not dramatic. It does not speak of sudden breakthroughs or rapid innovation. It speaks of endurance, patience, and repetition, the quiet transfer of knowledge from one set of hands to the next, the persistence of methods across landscapes and centuries. This is the beginning of culture, not in art or symbols, but in stone. The image is calm. A group sits near a riverbank, stones scattered at their feet. An elder strikes a core, a child imitates, others watch. Flakes are used to cut, to scrape, to crack. The motions are small, but they bind generations together. Through them, knowledge flows. Through them, survival continues. Beyond instinct, toward tradition. That is the step taken here. It is not yet language, not yet teaching in words, but it is more than reflex. It is memory, imitation, and continuity. It is the beginning of what will one day become culture. And it begins not with grand gestures, but with the quiet strike of stone against stone, repeated across centuries, repeated until it becomes tradition. Across the Rift Valley, the ground trembles, volcanoes rise like dark sentinels above the plains, their peaks crowned with smoke. From time to time, the earth splits open, releasing rivers of molten rock that creep across the land. Ash falls from the sky, drifting down in fine grey blankets that settle over grass, trees, and rivers. This is a land of fire and ash, and it shapes both the world of animals and the world of hominins. The volcanic forces that fracture East Africa also provide its raw materials. Basalt, obsidian, and rhyolite lie scattered across the valley floor. These stones, born in fire, are the foundation of the earliest tools. A cobble picked from a river may once have been part of a lava flow. A flake struck from its surface still carries the sharpness of volcanic glass. The rhythm of tool-making is bound to the rhythm of eruption. Without fire-born rock, the edges of stone would not exist. Volcanoes leave more than rock. They leave layers of ash that record the passage of time. At Oldowan Gorge in Tanzania, ash from repeated eruptions forms distinct bands in the cliffs. Between these layers, archaeologists find tools and bones, and the ash seals them, preserving them across millions of years. It is through volcanic ash that scientists can date the earliest tools with precision. Radioactive isotopes within the ash act as clocks, counting the years since an eruption. Thanks to fire, the timeline of human beginnings becomes visible. A confirmed fact is that volcanic activity shaped the environment of early hominins in both direct and indirect ways. Directly, it supplied the stone that became tools. Indirectly, it shaped habitats. Fresh lava flows destroyed vegetation, but over time the ash enriched the soil. Grasses returned, followed by herds of grazing animals. The cycle of destruction and renewal created a mosaic of landscapes, each with its own opportunities. A lesser-known detail is that some of the sharpest tools were made from obsidian, a volcanic glass formed by rapid cooling of lava. Obsidian flakes have edges finer than surgical steel. Even a light strike can produce a fragment capable of slicing through hide or plant fibers. Archaeological finds show that obsidian was used at some early sites, though more commonly later in prehistory. Its presence reveals that hominins recognized and selected particularly effective materials from the environment. Yet mysteries remain. How did eruptions affect the lives of those who lived nearby? Did hominins flee from falling ash, or did they return to landscapes transformed by fire? The fossil record cannot answer fully. Some layers show sudden breaks in occupation, suggesting disruption. Others show continuity, as though life resumed quickly after eruptions. The impact of fire may have varied, sometimes destructive, sometimes beneficial. The stones tell us only fragments of the story. At the planetary scale, volcanic activity is part of Earth's long rhythm. Tectonic plates shift, continents drift, and molten rock rises from deep below. The East African Rift is one of the most active zones on the planet, a place where new crust is being formed. These forces shape not only local landscapes but the entire planet's climate. Massive eruptions can release gases that cool the atmosphere, altering rainfall and vegetation. The lives of hominins, tied to rivers and plains, are linked to the deep processes of Earth itself. Step by step, The presence of fire-borne stone shapes behavior. A group searching along a river finds cobbles of basalt. They choose them, test them, strike flakes. Nearby, obsidian glitters, sharp even without modification. A shard is picked up, used to cut plant fibers or meat. The landscape itself provides tools, as long as one knows where to look. The volcanic past lies in every hand that grips a stone. The ash also shapes memory. Archaeological sites buried in volcanic layers preserve the details of daily life. At Oldowan, footprints of hominins and animals are sealed beneath ash, frozen in time. At Fora, stone tools and bones are encased in sediments capped by volcanic debris. These layers act like pages in a book, marking chapters of prehistory. Without fire and ash, much of the record would be lost. The slow rhythm of survival continues even in this fiery landscape. Eruptions are rare compared to daily life. Most days are quiet, tool-making, scavenging, resting. But over centuries, the memory of fire shapes the land. Each eruption leaves its mark, just as each tool leaves a scar on stone. Together, they form a layered history of earth and life. Some archaeologists suggest that living in such a landscape required adaptability. Hominins had to respond to sudden changes: ash that smothered plants, lava that cut across paths, rivers blocked or redirected by flows. Flexibility became essential. The ability to move, to find new water, to strike new flakes from new stones, all became part of survival. In this sense, fire and ash did not only provide tools, they demanded resilience. Consider the scale of time. Over millions of years, countless eruptions reshape the rift. Some volcanoes grow, then collapse into calderas. Others build mountains that rise above the plains. Through it all, hominins walk the land, their tools tied to the gifts and challenges of fire. The stone in their hands is the product of Earth's restless interior. Each flake carries the memory of molten origins. The image is steady. A wide plain lies beneath a distant volcano. Its slopes are dark, its summit hidden by cloud. At the base of the mountain, a river winds through grass. Hominins gather at its edge, striking flakes from cobbles carried down by past eruptions. In the silence of their work, the presence of fire is always near. Though they do not know its depth or power, they live within its rhythm. The landscape of fire and ash is not only destructive, it is creative. It provides the stones that become edges, the soils that nourish grasses, the cycles that sustain life. It preserves traces of the past, sealing them in ash for discovery millions of years later. It shapes the conditions in which tradition and survival unfold. Without fire, there would be no tools. Without ash, there would be no record. The history of humanity begins here, in a land where fire shapes stone and stone shapes survival. Across the Rift Valley, scattered traces of ancient activity remain. Stone flakes lie in clusters. Broken cores rest nearby, and animal bones bear the marks of sharp edges. To the archaeologist, these patterns raise a question. Were these places campsites? Did early hominins gather here deliberately, returning again and again? Or are the sites merely the residue of chance encounters, brief episodes of butchery and tool-making left behind in passing? The answer is uncertain, and the mystery remains. At Oldowan Gorge in Tanzania, some of the most famous sites show dense concentrations of artifacts: stone flakes, cores, hammerstones, and animal remains are found together in single layers. The clustering is striking. It suggests that the activities took place repeatedly in the same locations. Some areas even preserve hundreds of artifacts within a few square meters. To many researchers, this looks like the footprint of a camp, a place where groups paused, worked, and shared food. Yet the evidence is ambiguous. Water and erosion can move bones and stones, creating false patterns. Predators may drag carcasses to particular spots, leaving bone concentrations that hominins later exploited. Rivers may carry cobbles that accumulate naturally in certain bends. When archaeologists uncover clusters, they must ask, are these the results of human behavior or of natural forces? Distinguishing between the two is one of the central challenges of Oldowan research. A confirmed fact is that some bones at these sites show cut marks overlain by tooth marks, and this means hominins cut meat from carcasses before carnivores gnawed them. In other cases, tooth marks lie beneath cut mark, showing that hominins arrived after predators had fed. Either way, the interaction between humans, animals, and tools is clear. The sites represent activity, but whether that activity occurred at a camp or in brief encounters is harder to decide. A lesser-known detail comes from the discovery of possible anvils, large stones with battered surfaces found at some Oldowan sites. These may have been used for cracking nuts or bones. If so, they suggest repeated use of the same stones, anchored in place, visited multiple times. Such evidence strengthens the idea that some sites may have been stable locations, familiar to generations of toolmakers. Still, mysteries persist. Did hominins sleep at these sites, or only stop briefly? Were fires used here, even though evidence for controlled fire appears much later? Were these places chosen for safety, or simply for convenience near water and stone? Archaeologists debate these questions with no consensus. The Oldowan record offers clues, but never certainty. At the planetary scale, the importance of place reflects a larger pattern. Just as rivers shape valleys and climates shape ecosystems, human ancestors begin to shape landscapes with memory. Even without permanent structures, they return to the same edges of water, the same stone outcrops, the same grassy clearings. Tradition anchors behavior to particular places. This is the seed of settlement, though still in its earliest form. Step by step, a pattern may be imagined. A group follows animals to a lake shore. There, cobbles lie scattered in the shallows. A carcass, half eaten by predators, is pulled to the edge. Flakes are struck, meat is cut, marrow extracted. The group lingers for hours, perhaps days, before moving on. When they return seasons later, the same spot is chosen again. Over time, flakes and bones accumulate. The result is what archaeologists uncover today, a cluster of stone and bone that whispers of repetition. But whether such places deserve the name campsite is debated. A campsite, in modern language, suggests deliberate gathering, cooking, resting, and perhaps even sleeping. For Oldowan hominins, the reality may have been less structured. They may have paused only briefly, leaving behind the traces of meals and tool-making, or perhaps they stayed longer, using these places as temporary bases before moving on. The truth lies somewhere between, lost in the ambiguity of deep time. Some researchers suggest that the very concept of home base is premature for this stage of evolution. The Oldowan sites, they argue, are better understood as activity spots rather than true camps. Others disagree, pointing to the density and repetition of artifacts as evidence for shared spaces of community. The debate continues, reflecting the difficulty of interpreting fragmentary traces millions of years old. What is certain is that these sites reveal interaction between humans and their environment. They show choices of where to strike flakes, where to process carcasses, where to leave behind debris. They show that behavior was not random, but patterned. Even if not full camps, the sites represent gathering points, nodes of activity within wider landscapes. The rhythm of life at these places was slow, steady, and recurring. Groups moved across the land, following animals and water. When they reached familiar places, they paused, worked, and ate. Children watched as flakes were struck, learning through imitation. Elders shared knowledge through gesture and action. The site became a point of continuity, linking generations. At Oldowan, layers of volcanic ash preserve these traces in remarkable detail. One layer may hold flakes and bones from a single day. Another, just above, may hold evidence from centuries later. Stacked together, they form a silent record of repeated visits. The ash acts as a timekeeper, separating moments by thousands of years. Yet to the eye of the archaeologist, the tools look much the same. The rhythm of survival continues, unchanged across millennia. Consider the scale of movement. Hominins may have ranged tens of kilometers across grasslands in search of food. But when they returned to rivers or lakes, they often stopped in the same places. The clustering of artifacts suggests memory, an awareness of locations that offered resources. Even without maps or language, place itself carried meaning. The land became not only a space to move through, but a landscape of remembered points. The image is quiet. A scatter of flakes glitters on the ground, half buried in dust. A bone lies cracked open, its marrow long gone. Nearby, a large cobble rests, its surface battered by repeated strikes. The sun passes overhead, shadows shift, and the group moves on. But the traces remain. Over centuries, more are added, building the site layer by layer. What is left is neither a house nor a village, but something simpler, a memory written in stone and bone. The mystery of Oldowan campsites remains unresolved. Were they true gathering places or just activity spots repeated over time? The debate continues, but the significance endures. These sites reveal the first hints of place in human history. They show that survival was not only about movement, but about return. The water's edge, the stone outcrop, the sheltered clearing, each became more than a location. They became part of tradition, remembered and revisited. And so the story of the Oldowan is not only about tools, it is about places. It is about the first steps toward creating landscapes of memory. Even without fire, without houses, without words, human ancestors began to anchor themselves to the land. In the quiet clustering of flakes and bones lies the seed of settlement, the earliest whisper of home. Every flake struck from a core is more than a tool. It is also a reflection of the mind that shaped it. To break stone deliberately requires perception, control, and memory. The Oldowan tools may appear simple, but the actions behind them reveal a growing complexity in thought. Through stone, we glimpse the earliest connection between hand, eye, and brain. The act begins with selection. Not every stone can be used. Some break unpredictably, others crumble too easily. Basalt, rhyolite, quartzite. These are chosen for their fine grain and durability. To select a good stone requires recognition, an understanding born of experience. A poor choice wastes effort. A good choice rewards the strike with sharp flakes. Even this first step shows decision, a mental link between past outcomes and future expectations. Once chosen, the stone is held in hand, weighed and tested. The hammerstone must be harder than the core. The strike must fall at just the right angle. Archaeologists studying fracture mechanics know that flakes follow predictable paths, conchoidal curves shaped by the physics of stress. But to early hominins, the knowledge was not theoretical, it was practical, learned through repeated attempts. The precision of many flakes shows that the skill was real, even without conscious understanding of the physics behind it. A confirmed fact is that Oldowan tools show systematic removal of flakes. This is not random battering, it is controlled reduction, often from multiple angles, to produce usable edges. Such control requires planning. The toolmaker must anticipate the result of each strike, seeing not only the present shape of the stone, but its potential. This ability to visualize outcomes is a cognitive step beyond instinct. It is the beginning of mental rehearsal, the ability to imagine an action before performing it. A lesser-known detail comes from microscopic study of use wear on flakes. Under magnification, edges reveal tiny striations where they sliced meat, scraped wood, or cut plant fibers. These microscopic traces show that flakes were used for diverse purposes. This suggests flexibility in thought. Hominins did not see flakes as single-use objects but as multi-purpose tools, adaptable to different tasks. Such versatility indicates a broader understanding of function and potential. Yet mysteries remain. How much of this process was conscious? Did hominins recognize cause and effect in a way similar to modern humans, or were they guided mainly by trial and error? Did they understand that certain angles produced better flakes, or did they simply repeat what seemed to work? The stones cannot answer directly. They preserve evidence of skill but not of thought. Archaeologists continue to debate the depth of cognition behind the Oldowan. What is clear is that toolmaking engaged the brain in new ways. The hand and eye had to coordinate closely. The memory of successful strikes had to be stored and recalled. The attention span had to last long enough to complete a sequence of actions. Each of these demands nudged cognition forward. The brain evolved not only to perceive the world, but to shape it deliberately. The link between hand and mind grew stronger with each flake struck. At the planetary scale, this cognitive shift mirrored the broader changes of Earth. As climates fluctuated, hominins needed new ways to adapt. Stone tools provided access to varied resources: meat, marrow, plants, wood. But tools were not simply objects. They were embodiments of thought. They showed that humans were becoming creatures who altered their environment not only through movement, but through intention. This was a small step compared to later achievements, but it was the foundation on which all else was built. Step by step, minds were shaped by the shaping of stone. A child watched an elder strike flakes, imitating the motion. The child's first attempts failed. The flakes shattered or produced dull edges. But with time, improvement came. The child remembered what worked and what did not. This memory was applied to the next attempt, and the next. In this cycle of observation, practice, and refinement, cognition grew. The brain became a vessel not only for instinct, but for tradition, learning, and anticipation. The rhythm of toolmaking also shaped the body. Hands adapted for precise grip, thumbs strengthened for control, arms coordinated with eyes in deliberate motion. The body and brain evolved together, linked by the act of striking stone. The physical record in fossils shows changes in hand anatomy, with greater dexterity appearing over time. The archaeological record shows changes in behavior, with tools spreading across landscapes. Together, they reveal the intertwined path of biological and cultural evolution. Some archaeologists suggest that the Oldowan tradition, though stable in form, was dynamic in cognition. The tools did not change much, but the minds that made them did. The very act of repeating the same method across generations reinforced memory, skill, and identity. Tradition stabilized behavior, but within that stability, the human mind grew more capable of foresight and abstraction. Consider the scale of time. For over 1 million years waiting, flakes and cores remained similar. Yet during that span, hominin brains slowly expanded. The growth was not rapid, but gradual, like the steady accumulation of flakes in the dust. The shaping of stone was also the shaping of minds, carried forward one generation at a time. The image is quiet. A figure sits by a riverbank, striking flakes from a core. Each strike sends a sharp sound into the air. The flakes fall, some sharp, some broken. Nearby, a child watches, learning silently. The rhythm of stone on stone echoes across the valley. In that rhythm lies more than survival. It holds the first traces of imagination, of planning, of tradition. Shaping stones, shaping minds, this is the dual story of the Oldowan. Tools are not only objects, but reflections of thought. Each flake is a fragment of cognition, a piece of memory made tangible. Each core is a record of choices, a map of decisions struck into rock. Together, they show that humanity's journey is not only written in bones and landscapes, but in the sharp edges of stones shaped by growing minds. The Oldowan tradition does not remain in one place. From the first flakes struck at Gona in Ethiopia, stone tools begin to appear across the wide sweep of the Rift Valley. Over thousands of years, and then over more than 1 million, the rhythm of tool-making spreads from basin to basin, from river to river. Each site preserves fragments of the same method, the same sharp edges born of stone against stone. The tools are simple, but their reach is vast. The East African Rift is not a single valley, but a series of connected landscapes. It stretches for thousands of kilometers with high ridges, deep lakes, and fertile plains. Each region offers its own resources: cobbles in streams, animals at waterholes, grasslands for grazing herds. As groups of hominins move through these regions, they carry their knowledge with them. They leave behind flakes and cores, silent records of their passage. In this way, the Oldowan spreads, not by conquest, but by continuity. Archaeologists uncover these traces in many places. At Kubifora in Kenya, sites yield hundreds of artifacts mixed with fossil bones. At Oldowan Gorge in Tanzania, dense layers of flakes and bones are preserved in volcanic sediments. Farther north, in Ethiopia, Gona and Bauri reveal some of the oldest known tools. Together, these sites form a chain of evidence across the rift. They show that the same methods, the same rhythms, extended across great distances. A confirmed fact is that Oldowan tools are remarkably consistent across space and time. A flake struck at Gona looks very much like one struck at Oldowan, despite being separated by hundreds of kilometers and many thousands of years. This consistency suggests shared knowledge, A tradition passed along as groups moved. It may also suggest that the technique was so effective that little change was needed. Sharp edge, once discovered, was simply maintained in the same way wherever groups went. A lesser-known detail is the variation in raw material. At some sites, basalt dominates, its toughness making flakes durable. At others, quartzite or rhyolite is common. Occasionally, obsidian appears, providing exceptionally sharp edges. The choice reflects the local landscape. Hominins did not carry heavy stones over long distances. Instead, they adapted to what was available, using whatever the land provided. The similarity of tools, despite the variety of stone, shows the flexibility of the tradition. Yet mysteries remain. How far did groups travel in their lifetimes? Did they range across hundreds of kilometers, or remain within smaller territories? The widespread presence of tools suggests mobility, but the scale is uncertain. Some archaeologists believe that groups followed seasonal movements of animals, covering large distances. Others suggest smaller home ranges, with tools appearing across the rift because many groups lived in parallel, each with its own territory. The tools themselves cannot reveal the size of the journeys. They only show that the method of flaking stone was shared widely. At the planetary scale, this expansion of tools marks the first spreading of culture across landscapes. Other animals move with climate and food, but they do not leave behind objects shaped by tradition. Hominins, by contrast, carry knowledge that outlives individuals. Each site across the rift is a point in a network of continuity, tied together by the rhythm of flake and core. The spread of tools is the spread of tradition across valleys and through time. Step by step, the movement unfolds. A group leaves one lakeshore, following herds of antelope. They cross ridges, move through grasslands, and reach another river. There, they strike flakes, process bones, and leave behind their traces. Another group, centuries later, does the same in a different place. Over time, the whole rift becomes dotted with sites of stone and bone. The continuity is not deliberate, but cumulative. Each generation repeats what the last did, and the pattern grows. Some archaeologists describe this as the first evidence of landscape colonization, not in the modern sense of settlement, but in the sense that knowledge occupies space. Wherever groups move, they bring the same skill. The land becomes marked not only by natural features but by human tradition. This is the beginning of a cultural map, drawn not in ink or symbols but in flakes and cores. Consider the scale of the rift itself. From Ethiopia to Tanzania is a distance of more than 2,000 kilometers, greater than the distance from Paris to Istanbul. Over time, tools appear across this vast expanse. This does not mean that one group traveled the entire length. Rather, it shows that knowledge flowed across generations, moving gradually from one community to the next. The spread is slow, but relentless. It mirrors the slow pace of tectonic change that built the rift itself. The image is steady. At Gona, flakes scatter along a river. At Kubi Fora, bones cracked for marrow lie among basalt cores. At Oldowan, stone clusters shine beneath layers of ash. Each site is quiet now, but together they form a chorus. They speak of the same actions repeated, the same knowledge carried, the same rhythm sustained. The consistency of the Oldowan raises another mystery. Why did it not change more? Why did groups across thousands of kilometers and hundreds of thousands of years produce tools so similar? Some suggest conservatism, tradition maintained because it worked. Others suggest limits of cognition. Perhaps early hominins lacked the ability to imagine more complex forms. The answer may be both. but the result is the same. Across the rift, the tools remain nearly unchanged. This stability does not mean stagnation, it means resilience. In a world of shifting climates, the Oldowan provided continuity. Sharp flakes worked as well in dry grasslands as in wetter woodlands. Cores and hammerstones remained useful no matter where animals died. The unchanging form was not weakness, but strength. It allowed groups to survive in varied conditions without reinventing their methods. At the heart of this spread lies the human capacity for tradition. Knowledge is carried not in genes alone, but in practice. It is taught through imitation, remembered through repetition. This capacity allows culture to spread farther than the body, farther than instinct. Across the rift, culture leaves its first trail, faint but unmistakable. The story of tools across the rift is quiet but profound. It shows that humanity's beginnings were not confined to a single valley or river. They stretched across vast landscapes, tied together by the sharp edges of stone. Each flake, each core, each hammerstone is a fragment of that larger story. Together, they reveal that the journey of humanity is not only about movement of bodies, but about movement of knowledge. The image remains in the mind, a wide valley, a shimmering lake, a group at its edge. Stones struck, flakes scattered, bones cracked, far away. Another valley, another group, another scatter of flakes. The pattern repeats, linking distant places across centuries. In the silence of the rift, the memory of these actions endures. Tools across the rift, an echo of continuity, a thread of tradition stretched over space and time. The story of early stone tools cannot be separated from the story of climate. The Oldowan tradition, steady and enduring, unfolds in a world that is anything but stable. Across the Pliocene and into the Pleistocene, Earth swings between warmer and cooler phases. Rainfall patterns shift, rivers swell and dry, lakes expand and contract, forests give way to grasslands, then return again when the rains shift. In this changing environment, tools provide resilience. They are not only objects of stone, they are instruments of adaptation. In East Africa, climate change is written into the land. Deep cores drilled from ancient lake beds reveal layers of sediment, each marking a different age. Some layers are rich in pollen from forest trees, showing times of wetter conditions. Others contain pollen from grasses, marking drier, more open landscapes. Within these cycles, hominins lived and moved, their survival tied to the availability of food and water. It is within these rhythms that stone tools prove their worth. A confirmed fact is that cut-mark bones appear in both wet and dry phases, and this shows that tool use was not limited to one environment. In wetter time, when fruits and plants were abundant, tools allowed access to meat and marrow as supplements. In drier times, when plants were scarce, tools became essential for survival, opening carcasses to provide nutrition that the landscape alone could not. The edge of stone made hominins less vulnerable to the swings of climate. A lesser-known detail comes from isotopic studies of ancient soils. These studies show that grasslands expanded dramatically in Africa around 2 million years ago, replacing forests in many regions. Hominins living through this change faced new challenges: fewer trees for shelter, new predators in open country, and diets that had to adjust to grasses and grazers. Stone tools fit this shift. With flakes, hominins could process the carcasses of grazing animals, tapping into resources tied to the spread of savannas. The tools were not an innovation in response to climate. They already existed, but they became vital as environments changed. Yet mysteries remain. How directly did climate shifts drive human evolution? Did wetter and drier cycles push groups to explore new territories, spreading the Oldowan farther across Africa? Did scarcity of plants increase reliance on meat, shaping both diet and anatomy? Or did hominins simply endure these changes with tools as steady companions, without dramatic leaps? The answers are debated, and the stones alone cannot decide them. At the planetary scale, Earth enters a colder era. Ice grows in the far north, pulling global climate toward instability. The cycles of glacial and interglacial periods begin, lasting tens of thousands of years each. Though Africa does not freeze, it feels the effects. Rain belts shift south and north, sometimes greening the Sahara, sometimes drying it into desert. The Rift Valley lakes rise to great depths in wet phases, then shrink to dust in droughts. Through all of this, stone tools remain. They provide a thread of continuity through times of abundance and scarcity. Step by step, the interactions of tools and climate unfold. In a wet phase, hominins gather by a swollen lake. They pick cobbles from the shore, strike flakes, butcher animals drawn to the water. In a dry phase, the lake recedes to a muddy basin. Animals die of thirst, their carcasses lying exposed. Hominins crack bones for marrow, sustaining themselves when other foods fail. The rhythm of survival is not broken by climate, it bends with it, shaped by the sharp edge of stone. The fossil record provides glimpses of this adaptation. Animal remains show shifts in species composition, from browsers of leaves to grazers of grass. Hominins, too, show changes. Teeth become smaller and more specialized, suggesting less reliance on tough vegetation. Brain size slowly increases, perhaps supported by the richer nutrition of meat and marrow. Tools are not the only factor in these changes, but they play a role. They allow new diets, new strategies, and new resilience in a shifting world. Some archaeologists argue that climate change may have encouraged mobility. As lakes dried and rivers shifted, groups had to move to find reliable water and food. In doing so, they carried their knowledge of tool-making into new regions. The spread of the Oldowan may thus reflect not only tradition, but also response to environmental stress. Climate pushed, and culture carried the response. The slow pace of climate change mirrors the slow pace of tool change. Both unfold over tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years. Neither is sudden, neither is dramatic from the perspective of a single lifetime. But over deep time, both shape the course of evolution. Climate shifts provide the challenge, tools provide the means, and hominins walk the line between them. Consider the scale of resilience. Without tools, a dry season might mean death when plants failed. With tools, carcasses could be opened, marrow extracted, survival prolonged. This resilience is quiet, but profound. It is not a grand innovation, but a steady adaptation repeated across generations. The Oldowan is not only a technology, it is a strategy for living in a world of change. The image is calm. A dry plain stretches to the horizon, the grasses yellow and sparse. In the distance, a herd of antelope moves slowly toward a shrinking pool. Nearby, a carcass lies in the dust. A group of hominins approaches, flakes in hand. They cut, they crack, they eat. Above them, the sky is wide and empty, a reminder of the climate that governs all. Yet in their hands, the stones provide constancy. They hold an edge sharper than hunger, steadier than drought. The rhythm continues. In wet years, tools serve to supplement abundance. In dry years, tools serve as lifelines in scarcity. Through both, they endure unchanged. The meeting of tools and climate is not a single event, but a long conversation across millennia. The land shifts, the water rises and falls, the animals move, and always, hominins respond with the same steady rhythm of stone. This balance defines the era. The tools do not conquer climate, but they allow endurance within it. They give hominins the flexibility to survive cycles that would have broken less adaptable species. In this sense, the meeting of tools and climate is the foundation of humanity's long persistence. It shows that culture and environment are bound together, each shaping the other. Without climate shifts, perhaps tools would not have spread so far. Without tool, perhaps hominins would not have survived the shifts. Thus the Oldowan is more than flakes and cores. It is a record of resilience written into stone. It is a reflection of minds that endured change, of hands that adapted to shifting landscapes. It is the first sign that culture itself could buffer climate. That knowledge could provide continuity in a world without guarantees. The image remains, tools in hand, climate above, survival between. The rhythm is steady, the pace is slow, but the meaning is vast. When tools meet climate shifts, humanity takes its first steps toward resilience, steps that will carry it through droughts, ice ages, and beyond. The Rift Valley, with its rivers, lakes, and volcanic soils, and is not empty. It is alive with many species of hominins, each walking upright, each testing the limits of survival. The makers of the earliest tools live among cousins, close enough in form to be familiar, yet distinct in ways that matter deeply. This is a world shared with many kin, where the path of humanity is not solitary but entangled with others. Fossils reveal this diversity. In Ethiopia, remains of Australopithecus afarensis, the species of the famous Lucy, show that small-bodied, long-armed relatives still thrived around 3 million years ago. By 2.5 million years ago, Australopithecus africanus in the south and Australopithecus gari in the east may have overlapped with the earliest makers of stone tools. Soon after, fossils of early Homo, larger-brained, more human-like, begin to appear. Later still, robust species such as Paranthropus boisei and Paranthropus robustus dominate parts of east and southern Africa, their jaws massive, their teeth adapted to crushing tough vegetation. The rift is not a stage for one lineage, but a meeting ground of many. A confirmed fact is that cut-marked bones and stone tools are found in deposits that also contain remains of multiple hominin species. This means that more than one lineage lived in the same landscapes, sometimes at the same time. The tools could have been made by early Homo, but they may also have been within the capacity of Australopithecus. The identity of the first toolmaker remains uncertain. A lesser-known detail is that in some sites, such as Buri in Ethiopia, fossils of Australopithecus gari were found in close association with animal bones bearing cut marks. Though not definitive, this raises the possibility that tool-making was not exclusive to the genus Homo. If true, it means that technological behavior may have deeper roots than once thought, shared among multiple branches of the hominin family. Yet mysteries remain. Did different species compete for resources, or did they occupy different ecological niches? Did tool-making give one lineage an advantage over the others, or was knowledge shared, spreading across boundaries of species as well as generations? The fossil record does not reveal these interactions. We see only bones and stones, not relationships. Still, the overlapping presence of many kin suggests a complex social and ecological web. At the planetary scale, the story fits into a broader pattern of diversity and extinction. Across Earth, species emerge, flourish, and disappear. Hominins are no different. The rift holds many lineages, but only some will endure. Most will vanish, leaving behind fossils as their only legacy. The survival of one lineage, eventually our own, does not erase the presence of the others. For millions of years, humanity's ancestors lived not alone, but among many. Step by step, life unfolds in shared landscapes. A group of Paranthropus feeds on tough roots along a riverbank. Nearby, early Homo shapes flakes from cobbles. In the distance, another lineage gathers fruits in woodland patches. Each species adapts to its niche. Each finds its way. Predators watch all alike. Lions and leopards taking no notice of subtle distinctions. To survive is to share space, to move in overlapping paths, to live within a mosaic of kin. Fossils of Paranthropus boisei tell a vivid part of this story. Their skulls show enormous jaws and massive molars, suited for grinding hard plant foods. They are sometimes called nutcracker man, though their diet may have been more varied. They lived for nearly 1 million years alongside tool-making species, yet they left no evidence of stone tools. Perhaps their adaptations made them less reliant on sharp edges, tied instead to the strength of their jaws. Their survival strategy was different, but effective for a time. Early Homo, with smaller teeth and larger brains, relied more on tools. This distinction may have shaped their future. Where Paranthropus was tied to a specific diet, Homo was more flexible, using tools to exploit varied resources. Flexibility in a shifting climate proved crucial. Over time, the robust kin disappeared, while the toolmakers endured. The presence of multiple lineages raises another mystery. Did they ever interact directly? Were there moments of contact, of conflict, of sharing? We cannot know. The stones and bones reveal coexistence in space, but not in behavior. Perhaps each lineage kept to itself, passing in silence. Perhaps encounters occurred, sometimes peaceful, sometimes violent. The evidence remains silent, leaving only possibilities. On the cognitive scale, the existence of many kin invites reflection. For millions of years, being human did not mean being alone. It meant being one among several, a branch among branches. The Oldowan tools, simple as they are, mark a distinction but not necessarily a boundary. They may have been shared, copied, or reinvented independently. The tools are a thread, but the fabric of early humanity is woven of many strands. Consider the scale of diversity. At around 2 million years ago, as many as 4 or 5 hominin species may have lived at once in Africa. This diversity rivals that of any other primate family. Yet today, only one lineage remains. The long coexistence, followed by extinctions, shows how fragile survival is. Being human is not the inevitable outcome, but the result of many branches, most of which ended. The image is quiet. Along a lakeshore, multiple groups of hominins move in sight of one another. Some carry flakes, others dig roots, others climb low trees for fruit. They do not know they are different species. They only know their needs. Predators circle. Water shimmers. Volcanic cliffs rise in the distance. The land holds them all together, kin and cousins alike. The presence of many kin is not a footnote to the story of tools. It is central. It shows that the Oldowan was not born in isolation. It emerged in a world of diversity, where multiple lineages shaped their survival strategies. Tools were one path among many, not the only way, but in the long run, it was the path that endured. Thus, the Oldowan sites are not only records of technology, they are records of coexistence. They remind us that the human journey was once shared. The sharp edge of stone belongs to a lineage that survived, but it rests in landscapes where others walked too. To understand our beginnings is to remember them, not as rivals, not as shadows, but as kin who shaped the world alongside us. In the silence of the rift, their bones remain. In the fragments of jaws and teeth, in the massive skulls of Paranthropus, in the slender forms of Australopithecus, the memory of kin endures. The tools lie among them, sharp-edged and timeless. Together, they tell a story not of one lineage alone, but of many. A world shared, a world diverse, a world where humanity was never solitary at the start. For more than 1,000,000 years, the Oldowan tradition remains. From its beginnings at 2.6 million years ago until around 1.6 million years ago, flakes, cores, and hammerstones dominate the archaeological record. The form hardly changes. A flake struck at Gona in Ethiopia looks almost identical to one struck at Oldowan Gorge 1,000,000 years later. This long silence of stones is one of the most remarkable features of early prehistory. To the modern mind, it seems puzzling. Why would tools remain so unchanged for so long? We live in an age of rapid innovation, where technologies evolve in decades or even years. But in the deep past, the rhythm of change was far slower. The silence of stones was not stagnation, it was stability. It was the quiet persistence of methods that worked. A confirmed fact is that the Oldowan was effective. Sharp flakes cut meat, scrape hides, slice plants. Hammerstones cracked bones for marrow, broke nuts, and shaped cores. For daily survival, little more was needed. In a world where life was fragile, efficiency and reliability mattered more than novelty. The Oldowan provided both. A lesser-known detail is the sheer abundance of artifacts across this long span. At Kubi Fora, Oldowan, and other sites, archaeologists find thousands of tools in layers spanning hundreds of thousands of years. The constancy is striking. The same shapes recur again and again, across regions and across ages. This suggests that the Oldowan was not an accidental discovery, but a deeply rooted tradition, passed on with remarkable fidelity. Yet mysteries remain. Why did innovation not come sooner? Did hominins lack the cognitive capacity for more complex forms, or did they simply not need them? Some researchers argue that the brains of early Homo were capable of greater complexity, but that survival needs did not demand it. Others suggest that innovations in perishable materials, wood, bone, or fiber may have occurred but left little trace. The stones may be silent not because innovation was absent, but because it was invisible to preservation. At the planetary scale, Dahi, the silence of stones mirrors the slow pace of Earth itself. Tectonic plates move at centimeters per year. Rivers carve valleys over millennia. Climate swings between wet and dry phases across tens of thousands of years. In this context, the Oldowan's 1,000,000-year continuity is not unusual. It is part of the same deep rhythm, steady and patient, unhurried by human expectations of change. Step by step, generations live within this silence. Children watch their elders strike flakes. They learn by imitation, producing the same tools, making the same choices. Over centuries, nothing alters in visible form. A core struck 1,000 years earlier could serve the same function as one struck yesterday. The rhythm of life is too fragile, too precarious, to risk experimentation that may fail. Tradition, not innovation, sustains survival. The archaeological record reinforces this picture. At site after site, the same combination of flakes and bones appears. Cut marks on ribs, impact scars on long bones, hammerstones nearby. The scene is repeated endlessly. A carcass found, tools made, meat cut, marrow extracted. The tools serve their purpose without need for change. The silence is not emptiness, it is persistence. But within this silence, subtle hints of variation exist. Some cores show more systematic flaking, edges managed more carefully. Others are rough, with only a few flakes removed. This may reflect differences in skill or slight variations in tradition. Yet the differences never accumulate into major change. The Oldowan remains recognizably itself. Some archaeologists suggest that this silence reflects the limits of culture at the time. Traditions were strong enough to maintain continuity, but not yet complex enough to foster innovation. Knowledge was passed on faithfully, but without modification. This balance kept groups alive, but at the cost of progress. It was stability, not creativity, that defined the age. Consider the scale of this silence. From 2.6 million to 1.6 million years ago is a span longer than all of recorded human history, many times over. Across that time, countless generations lived and died, each shaping flakes in the same way. Civilizations, languages, and technologies we know today are fleeting compared to the persistence of the Oldowan. In the silence of stones lies a lesson about the endurance of tradition. The long silence is also a mystery of perception. Perhaps early hominins did not see the stones as unchanging. Perhaps each flake, each tool, carried subtle differences that mattered to them, though invisible to us. Our perspective is limited by what survives in the ground. We see continuity, they may have seen nuance. The silence may not have felt silent to those who lived within it. At the same time, the eventual end of the silence is significant. Around 1.6 million years ago, a new tool tradition emerges. The Acheulean, hand axes, symmetrical and refined, appear in the record. The leap is sudden compared to the long Oldowan span. This raises another mystery. What changed? Did a new species of hominin with larger brains drive the innovation? Did climate shifts create new pressures that demanded more versatile tools? Or did accumulated knowledge finally break through the barrier of tradition? The silence of stones sets the stage for this transformation. Step by step, the silence shapes not only survival but identity. The constancy of tools reinforces the constancy of life. Groups move across landscapes, repeat the same actions, rely on the same edges. The predictability of tools mirrors the predictability of tradition. Within this framework, hominins endure climate swings, predators, and scarcity. The silence of stones is not weakness, it is strength. The image is quiet. A river flows across the plain, its banks littered with cobbles. A group pauses, striking flakes, cutting meat, cracking bones. Children gather the fragments, imitating the strikes. Nearby, another generation does the same. Centuries later, The pattern is timeless, echoing across ages. The stones remain silent, but their silence is filled with life. The long silence of stones reminds us that humanity's beginnings were not defined by rapid change. They were defined by persistence, patience, and continuity. The silence is not the absence of history, it is history itself, written in the repetition of simple acts. It shows that before innovation came stability, before creativity came tradition. And it is within this silence that the foundations of humanity were laid, steady as the stones themselves. The Oldowan record is full of local stone. Most flakes and cores are struck from cobbles picked directly from nearby riverbeds or stream banks. The tools reflect the geology of the immediate surroundings: basalt where lava once flowed, quartzite where outcrops stand, rhyolite where ancient eruptions scattered debris. But occasionally, archaeologists find something unexpected. Among the common local stones appear artifacts made of materials that do not match the landscape. Pieces of obsidian show up in places far from volcanic flows. Quartzite appears in regions with no bedrock of that kind. These discoveries raise an important question. How did stones travel so far? The simplest explanation is natural transport. Rivers are powerful movers of stone. Floods can carry cobbles downstream for kilometers, depositing them in new locations. Over millennia, stones can shift long distances without human hands ever touching them. But in some cases, the explanation does not fit. Artifacts made of non-local stones sometimes appear in contexts where no river could have carried them. They lie many kilometers from the nearest geological source, in places where only deliberate transport can explain their presence. A confirmed fact is that at sites like Oldowan Gorge in Tanzania, chemical analysis of artifacts has traced their origins back to sources located several kilometers away. In some cases, the raw material traveled 10, 20, or even more kilometers before being shaped into tools. This evidence suggests that early hominins carried stone across the landscape, selecting it for its quality and keeping it until needed. The Oldowan tradition, though stable in form, was flexible in practice. Hominins were not limited to what lay immediately underfoot. They moved stone, and with it, they moved knowledge. A lesser-known detail comes from the properties of obsidian. This volcanic glass produces edges sharper than almost any other material. Even today, obsidian blades can be used in surgical procedures because their edges are finer than steel. At certain Oldowan sites, obsidian flakes appear despite the absence of local flows. This suggests that hominins recognized the exceptional quality of obsidian and carried it deliberately, even when other stones were available nearby. The presence of such artifacts hints at early preference, perhaps even value placed on certain materials. Yet mysteries remain. Were stones carried as raw cobbles, heavy but durable, or as pre-shaped cores and flakes, lighter but still useful? Did hominins plan ahead, gathering high-quality stone with the intention of using it later? Or did they simply pick up unusual cobbles along their journeys, striking them when convenient? The archaeological record cannot answer directly. What it shows is the result: stones lying far from their geological homes, silent evidence of movement. At the planetary scale, this movement of stone reflects the broader patterns of mobility. Animals migrate across savannas following rains and grasses. Rivers cut through valleys, shifting sediments far from their origins. Volcanoes scatter ash across continents. Among these natural forces, the carrying of stone by hominins is small, but it matters. It shows that humans are beginning to move the world in ways no other animal does, not just their bodies, but the materials of the earth itself. Step by step, the story unfolds. A group travels along the rift, following herds of antelope. At a volcanic outcrop, they gather cobbles of obsidian, striking a few flakes, but keeping others. Days later, at a lakeshore, many kilometers away, the same stones are struck again, producing sharp edges used to butcher an animal. The flakes are left behind, their volcanic origins far away. Centuries later, archaeologists uncover them, puzzled by the mismatch between artifact and landscape. The journey of the stone is revealed only through science. But the act itself was simple, a hand carrying a cobble across a valley. The significance lies in foresight. To transport stone suggests more than immediate need. It implies planning for the future, carrying resources for tasks not yet encountered. It marks a small but important cognitive step. Hominins were not bound solely to the present moment. They could act with tomorrow in mind, keeping useful material for later. This foresight foreshadows the complex planning that will one day define humanity. Consider the effort involved. Carrying a heavy cobble for 10 kilometers is no small task. Every extra kilogram slows movement and increases fatigue. The decision to carry stone shows that the benefits outweighed the costs. Sharp edges, reliable and effective, justified the burden. In this choice, we see judgment, evaluation, and anticipation. The transport of stone is not random, it is meaningful. Some archaeologists argue that the distances involved may reflect seasonal movement. Groups followed animals and water, traveling across landscapes naturally. In doing so, they carried stone along their paths, using it when opportunities arose. The spread of non-local artifacts may therefore reflect mobility rather than deliberate trade. Others suggest that the presence of high-quality stone far from its source shows true transport, a deliberate act of carrying resources into areas where they were rare. Both views may hold truth. What matters is that the stones moved, and with them, the story of human adaptation expanded. At Oldowan, layers of volcanic ash preserve these moments. Obsidian flakes lie beside basalt cores, each telling a different geological story. The juxtaposition shows that groups combined local and non-local materials, adapting to availability. They were not bound to one resource, but flexible in choice. This flexibility is a hallmark of resilience. It shows that even within the conservatism of the Oldowan, behavior was dynamic. The movement of stone also hints at memory. To return to the same outcrops for raw material suggests awareness of location across time. Groups may have remembered where the best cobbles were found, returning season after season. Such memory ties knowledge to landscape. The land becomes not only a source of food and water, but a map of resources. This mapping is an early form of cultural geography, written not in symbols, but in paths and choices. The image is calm. A wide plain stretches beneath volcanic ridges. In the distance, a dark outcrop glints with obsidian. A group pauses, selecting cobbles, testing their weight. One is carried away across valleys and rivers to a new place. There, flakes scatter as it is struck. The pieces remain for millennia. Silent travelers far from their origin. Stones that travel far remind us that humanity's beginnings were not only about making, but about moving. The tools themselves are simple, unchanged for over 1 million years. But their journeys reveal something more. The beginnings of planning, memory, and connection across landscapes. Each transported cobble is a sign of foresight. Each flake left far from its source is a record of mobility. Together, they mark a step toward the great migrations that will one day carry humans across continents. In the silence of the rift, the story is clear. Tools are not bound to place. They move with hands, with groups, with traditions. They link distant valleys, turning scattered landscapes into a connected world. The first long journeys are not of people alone, but of the stones they chose to carry. The Oldowan tradition stretches across more than 1 million years. From its beginnings in the Rift Valley around 2.6 million years ago, to its persistence until roughly 1.5 million years ago, it remains a constant presence in the archaeological record. The tools are simple: flakes, cores, hammerstones. Their forms change little, but their echoes are immense, carried forward in every later stage of human history. A confirmed fact is clear: the Oldowan is the earliest known stone tool tradition. It represents the first durable record of technology in human evolution. While earlier tools of bone or wood may have existed, none have survived. Stone alone endures, preserving the traces of ancient actions in layers of sediment. When archaeologists find Oldowan tools, they find the first undeniable evidence of human ancestors shaping their world. A lesser-known detail lies in the spread of the tradition. Oldowan tools are not confined to East Africa. They appear in North Africa, in the Caucasus, and even as far as East Asia, at Dmanisi in Georgia, nearly 1.8 million years ago. Oldowan-like tools are found alongside fossils of early Homo. This shows that the tradition traveled with migrations, crossing continents. The echoes of the first edge spread far beyond their place of origin, carried by the movement of people into new lands. Yet mysteries remain. Why did the Oldowan endure for so long, with so little change? For more than 1 million years, the basic method of striking flakes from cores remained the same. Did hominins lack the ability to innovate? Or was the Oldowan simply effective enough for their needs? Some archaeologists suggest that the simplicity of the tools was their strength, reliable, flexible, and sufficient for survival. Others wonder whether cultural conservatism or limited communication between groups slowed the pace of change. The silence of the record leaves the question open. At the planetary scale, the Oldowan unfolds against immense shifts in climate and geography. During its span, ice sheets advance and retreat, seas rise and fall, grasslands expand and contract. Yet through all these changes, the same stone tools remain. The stability of the Oldowan is a contrast to the restlessness of the earth. It is a reminder that survival often depends not on novelty, but on persistence. The tools endure, just as rivers continue to flow and mountains continue to erode. Step by step, the echoes of the first edge spread. A flake cuts meat from a carcass, another scrapes hide, a hammerstone splits a bone. The actions are small, repeated countless times, but together they transform the possibilities of life. With stone tools, early hominins gain access to resources they could not otherwise use. Meat and marrow expand their diet. This in turn supports larger brains, greater mobility, and new forms of social life. The echo of a single strike carries into biology itself. Consider the scale of time. From 2.6 to 1.5 million years ago is more than 1 million years of continuity. By comparison, all of recorded human history is only a few thousand years. Empires rise and fall in centuries, but the Oldowan lasts for an epoch. Its endurance shows that technology does not always advance quickly. Sometimes it holds steady, carried forward because it works. The echoes of the first edge are long and steady, like the rhythm of the earth itself. Archaeologists study not only the tools, but the patterns of their use at Gona, Oldowan, Kubifora, and many other sites. Flakes and bones lie together. Each site is a fragment of behavior, a moment in deep time. Together they form a picture of life repeated across landscapes. The echoes accumulate, forming a chorus of activity that stretches across continents. The first edge, struck on a cobble, resonates in every layer of sediment. Some scientists suggest that the Oldowan was more than a tool tradition, it was a way of life. Its persistence may reflect not just technology, but a whole system of survival. Riverside sites, scattered flakes, cut-marked bones, all a part of a pattern. This pattern shows mobility, adaptation, and persistence in changing environments. The echoes are not just in the stones, but in the choices made by the hands that shape them. The silence of the Oldowan is striking. Unlike later traditions, there is no art, no symbols, no clear signs of abstract thought. The tools speak only of function, of survival. But even in their silence, they carry meaning. They tell us of the moment when humans first began to shape the world with intention. That moment, once begun, has never ended. The echoes continue into every tool that followed. Step by step, we can trace the line forward. The Acheulean hand axes will come, more symmetrical, more refined. Later, the Levallois technique will emerge, striking flakes with precision. Still later, blades and points will appear, followed by symbols, art, and writing. But behind them all lies the first edge. The echo of that moment is in every future innovation. The simple flake is the ancestor of all technology. The planetary perspective is humbling. While glaciers grind continents, while tectonic plates shift mountains, hominins strike flakes from stone. Their actions are small compared to the forces of Earth, yet they matter. For in those small actions lies the seed of something vast. The first edge will lead to fire, to settlement, to cities, to all the complexity of human life. But it begins here, with a stone struck in the Rift Valley. The echoes of the first edge are quiet, but they endure. Each flake left on ancient ground is an echo. Each cut mark on bone is another. Together, they form a chorus that carries across time, linking us to the deep past. We live today surrounded by tools of unimaginable complexity, but their lineage is simple. It begins with the Oldowan. It begins with a hand, a stone, and the spark of intention. In the stillness of deep time, the echoes continue. The rivers change course, the lakes rise and fall, the climate shifts. But in the sediment, the stones remain. They speak of hands long vanished, of lives lived in quiet persistence. Their message is not loud but steady. Humanity begins here, at the first edge. The echo is unbroken. It carries into the present, and it will carry into the future, as long as tools remain part of our story. In the quiet layers of ancient earth, the first stones remain. They lie where they were struck, scattered along riverbanks, beneath volcanic ridges, within the dust of savannas now long vanished. Each flake is small, yet together they hold the beginning of human story. They are not art, not symbols and monuments. They are edges, sharp, simple, enduring. The Oldowan tools whisper of intention. They tell us that hands once struck stone with purpose. They remind us that thought and action, once joined, never separated again. From those first edges grew every tool, every shelter, every journey that followed.
Much is still unknown. We do not hear the voices of those who made them. We do not know their names or the rhythms of their days. We do not know what they hoped for or what they feared. But in the silence, something remains, a connection across time, carried by stone.
Far away, across millions of years, their echoes reach us still. They remind us that beginnings are often quiet, that persistence shapes more than sudden change, and that the simplest act, a hand striking stone, can set the course of everything to come. In the stillness of the night, as rivers once flowed and winds once shifted, the stones remain. They are the first edges, the first intentions, the first echoes of humanity. And in their silence, they endure.